The Anatolian hypothesis proposes that the dispersal of Proto-Indo-Europeans originated in Neolithic Anatolia. Theory. The hypothesis suggests that the speakers of the Proto-Indo-European language lived in Anatolia during the Neolithic era, and associates the distribution of historical Indo-European languages with the expansion during the Neolithic revolution of the 7th and 6th millennia BC. An alternative is the Kurgan hypothesis. The main competitor to the Kurgan hypothesis is the Anatolian hypothesis advanced by Colin Renfrew in 1987. It states that the Indo-European languages began to spread peacefully into Europe from Asia Minor from around 7000 BCE with the Neolithic advance of farming. Accordingly, most of the inhabitants of Neolithic Europe would have spoken Indo-European languages, and later migrations would at best have replaced these Indo-European varieties with other Indo-European varieties. The expansion of agriculture from the Middle East would have diffused three language families: Indo-European toward Europe, Dravidian toward Pakistan and India, and Afro-Asiatic toward Arabia and North Africa. Reacting to criticism, Renfrew revised his proposal to the effect of taking a pronounced Indo-Hittite position. Renfrew's revised views place only pre-Proto-Indo-European in 7th millennium BC Anatolia, proposing as the homeland of Proto-Indo-European proper the Balkans around 5000 BC, explicitly identified as the Old European culture proposed by Maria Gimbutas. He thus still situates the original source of the Indo-European language family in Anatolia around 7000 BC. Reconstructions of a Bronze Age by society based on vocabulary items like wheel do not necessarily hold for the Anatolian branch, which appears to have separated from part an early stage prior to the invention of wheeled vehicles. According to Renfrew, the spread of Indo-European proceeded in the following steps: around 6500 BC, pre-Proto-Indo-European, located in Anatolia, splits into Anatolian and Archaic Proto-Indo-European, the language of those pre-Proto-Indo-European farmers who migrate to Europe in the initial farming dispersal. Archaic Proto-Indo-European languages occur in the Balkans, in the Danube Valley, and possibly in the Bugd-Niestr area. Around 5000 BC, Archaic Proto-Indo-European splits into Northwestern Indo-European, located in the Danube Valley, Balkan Proto-Indo-European, and Early Steppe Proto-Indo-European. The main strength of the farming hypothesis lies in its linking of the spread of Indo-European languages with an archaeologically known event, which scholars often assume involved significant population shifts. Support from Bayesian analysis. Bayesian analysis, a 2003 analysis of 87 languages with 2,449 lexical items, found an age range for the initial Indo-European divergence of 7,800–9,800 years, which was found to be consistent with the Anatolian hypothesis. Using stochastic models to evaluate the presence or absence of different words across Indo-European, Gray and Atkinson concluded that the origin of Indo-European goes back about 8,500 years, the first split being that of Hittite from the rest. In 2006, the authors of the paper responded to the critics. In 2011, the same authors and S. Greenhill found that two different datasets were also consistent with the theory. An analysis by Ryder and Nichols found support for the Anatolian hypothesis. Our main result is a unimodal posterior distribution for the age of Proto-Indo-European centered at 8,400 years before present, with 95% highest posterior density interval equal to 7,100–9,800 years before present. A computerized phylogeographic study published in August 2012 in Science, using methods drawn from the modeling of the spatial diffusion of infectious diseases, also showed strong support for the Anatolian hypothesis, despite having undergone corrections and revisions. Linguist Paul Hegarty from Max Planck Institute writes in 2014, Bayesian analysis has come to be widely used in archaeological chronologies. Its application to linguistic prehistory, however, has proved controversial, in particular on the issue of Indo-European origins. Dating and mapping language distributions back into prehistory has an inevitable fascination, but has remained fraught with difficulty. This review of recent studies highlights the potential of increasingly sophisticated Bayesian phylogenetic models, while also identifying areas of concern, and ways in which the models might be refined to address them. Notwithstanding these remaining limitations, in the Indo-European case the results from Bayesian phylogenetics continue to reinforce the argument for an Anatolian rather than a steppe origin. Criticism of Bayesian analysis, inferring the lifespan of a language from that of some of its words is a procedure that remains at least questionable. Moreover, the idiosyncratic outcome of, for example, the Albanian language must raise severe doubts about both the method and the data. Besides, there have been a number of lexicostatistical attempts both before and after GNAMP, with quite other results. The method promoted by the Grey School is at the moment far too unreliable to give decisive support for any homeland. Criticism. Dating. The main objection to this theory is that it requires an unrealistically early date. Most estimates from Indo-Europeanists date Pi between 4500 and 2500 BC, with the most probable date falling right around 3700 BC. It is unlikely that late Pi postdates 2500 BC, since Proto-Indo-Iranian is usually dated to just before 2000 BC. On the other hand, it is not very likely that early Pi predates 4500 BC, because the reconstructed vocabulary strongly suggests a culture at the terminal phase of the Neolithic bordering on the early Bronze Age. According to linguistic analysis, the Proto-Indo-European lexicon seems to include words for a range of inventions and practices related to the secondary products revolution, which postdates the early spread of farming. On lexicocultural dating, Proto-Indo-European cannot be earlier than 4000 BC. Pi contains words for technologies that make the first appearance in the archaeological record in the late Neolithic, in some cases bordering on the early Bronze Age, and that some of these words belong to the oldest layers of Pi. The lexicon includes words relating to agriculture, stock breeding, metallurgy, the plough, gold, domesticated horses and wheeled vehicles. Horse breeding is thought to have originated with the Sredny stog culture, semi-nomadic pastoralists living in the forest steppe zone in present-day Ukraine. Wheeled vehicles are thought to have originated with funnel-bika culture in what is now Poland, Belarus, and parts of Ukraine. Linguistics. Many Indo-European languages have cognate words meaning axle, for example, Latin axis, Lithuanian axis, Russian os, and Sanskrit aksa. All these are linked to the Pi root akas. The reconstructed Pi root iuji gives rise to German jok, Hittite yukon, and Sanskrit yuga, all meaning yoke. Words for wheel and cart, wagon, chariot, take one of two common forms, thought to be linked with two Pi roots. The root kl, move around, is the basis of the unique derivative klo, wheel, which becomes hve akutel in Old Icelandic, kolo in Old Church Slavonic, kakla in Lithuanian, kaiklo in Greek, kakra in Pali and Sanskrit, and kukul in Tocharian a. The root ret becomes rad in Old High German, rota in Latin, ratus in Lithuanian, and ratha in Sanskrit. farming. Other difficulties with the theory could be the idea that farming was spread from Anatolia in a single wave has been revised. Instead, it appears to have spread in several waves by several routes, primarily from the Levant. The trail of plant domesticates indicates an initial foray from the Levant by sea. The overland route via Anatolia seems to have been most significant in spreading farming into Southeast Europe. Non-Indo-European languages appear to be associated with the spread of farming from the Near East into North Africa and the Caucasus. Genetics. Lazaridis et al., writing on the origins of ancestral North Indians, note, the fact that we can reject West Eurasian population sources from Anatolia, mainland Europe, and the Levant diminishes the likelihood that these areas were sources of Indo-European languages in South Asia.